Hello and thank you for coming to check this out. So this is part 2 of our Overshoot guide, and we will just carry on from where we were at the end of part 1. So we were looking at how we can keyframe a curve like this and then just add the overshoot behavior onto the end. We had 3 examples: animating along a x-axis, and rotation and scaling, which are like 3 common reasons that we want to use overshoot with. And the whole point is that we can get a better looking animation than we can get just by using the overshoot behavior on its own. Okay, so about this curve here, there is a motion behavior, a motion parameter behavior that does the job that this keyframe curve will do. So if I turn on this group up here, then we can talk about getting rid of keyframing altogether and just using behaviors. So we've got the same 3 examples: rotation, scaling, and animating along an axis. If I jump into the circle here, there is the parameter behavior that I was talking about. It is applied to the x-axis. Here's the keyframed curve. Here is the parameter behavior curve. You can see they're quite similar. Now when we add the parameter behavior initially, the start offset will be set at 0, which will give us a curve that looks like this, which is quite different from this kind of curve. Now in part 1 we rushed by these, but now it's time to check out what they do. So the start offset here, if I was to just apply it, as I said, it would be at 0. And with the start offset, what I can do is move it back, and you can see in the keyframe editor that by moving the start offset, I'm manipulating the shape of the curve that will tell the circle how to move along the x-axis. So we can get quite a bit of control using behaviors instead of keyframing. So I think it all depends on what kind of project you're doing and what kind of results you like to get. We can clearly see here that behaviors can do as good a job as keyframing. So let's have a look at how we set up that exponential parameter behavior. I'll just close that group, come into this group. Let's turn these off. Let's take our square first. And I've left the overshoot behaviors on. Let's see how we set up the exponential parameter behavior to do the scaling job for us instead of keyframing. So I've got these shapes selected. I'll come into properties, into scale. Note that it's sitting at 100% there. So just the same as in part 1, that's important. I'm going to add here the exponential parameter behavior. So I'm adding that onto the scale. And I'll bring my playhead to the start. So remember, the start value is at 0. I want it to be minus 100, which is going to give us 0 scale in relation to what its actual scale value was over here. Then at the end I want it to be 0, which means it's going to bring it back to its natural state. In the keyframe editor you can see that the end condition is way over here at 10 seconds, which is the length of the project. So I want to move that point to here, the 1 second mark. And I'm going to do that by moving this end point offset here. So I'll move the end offset. Right, and there it is. So now our square will scale from 0 to 100%. Over 30 frames, 1 second, and I'll turn back on the overshoot behavior. There we are. Now, as I said before, we can control this curve here by adjusting the start offset. Okay, so I think now that you know how to set up the exponential parameter behavior, then you know now how to get the same results for rotation and the x position. Let's have a look at something else. Let's see what we can do with another combination. So I have this square here. I've called it stretch. What I'm going to do is select this shape in the canvas and grab its anchor point. I'll just turn my controls back on so we can see. I've already done it for us. So I've moved the anchor point down to the bottom. So now I'm going to come into the inspector here and let's have a look at the Y scale. If I play with the Y scale, I can move it just along its Y axis, scale it like that. So let's use a couple of behaviors to stretch it and have it bounce. So what I'm going to do is grab the menu here and add parameter behavior. Let's use ramp. Bring my playhead to 1 second. So you can see the parameter behavior fills out along the duration of the project, which is 10 seconds. We'll talk about that in a second. Actually, I want to trim it to the playhead for this example. I'm going to trim it so that once the playhead moves past the parameter behavior, the effect of the parameter behavior is going to be lost. And we'll see why we want that in a tick. Okay, so the start value is 0, meaning that our start value is the normal scale that it already is. The end value, I'm going to make 150. So I'm stretching it this way. So it's going to scale from here to here. And I can adjust the curvature of the behavior to give us a nicer looking animation as it stretches. Okay, and you see that? When the playhead passes the end of the ramp behavior, it's going to snap back. So let's add an overshoot behavior now to the Y scale and see if we can get it to wobble and bounce as it snaps back. So my playhead's there at the 1 second. Let's put that to 1 second and 1 frame just after it. I'll grab the shape. I'll come and grab that Y scale. I'm going to go add parameter behavior, overshoot, and let's trim it to 2 seconds and have it start at 1 second, 1 frame. So the Y scale is snapping back, coming down, so we want the overshoot to continue moving down at first. So let's give it our start value here and let's bring our ramp duration right down so we get a nice exaggerated overshoot. Well, let's see how this plays out. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had in mind. So okay, there you go. So you see that we don't have to use keyframing at all. Depending on your choices and your preferences, we can use behaviors to do everything for us. I hope that this was helpful, and thanks for watching.